Okay, so a producer, another important definition here, is an organism that gets the energy it needs by making its own food. Okay, we've already talked a little bit about this. These are things like plants. Okay, plants here, you got grass and some plants, and then of course some algae. Okay, you've ever seen algae, gone to Lake Winnipeg and seen algae floating on the water? Sometimes it looks all um, sudsy or bubbly. Okay, a consumer is an organism that gets the energy it needs by eating producers or other consumers. So here we have a consumer. This is what's called a primary consumer. Okay, primary means first, right? And so our primary consumer, what are they doing? They're consuming producers, right? They're consuming an organism that makes its own food, right? So the deer is eating the grass. Okay, then of course we have a secondary. They may be secondary or tertiary, okay, which means secondary being the second one and tertiary being the third one, so that they'll be at different levels. But of course we have, what looks like a deer or something like that here, being eaten by these consumers, which are likely tertiary consumers, or they're very high in the food chain. Producers transfer energy to consumers through food chains and food webs. So what you see here is a food chain. Okay, it's very linear, very straight, right? You can see that from the sun transfers its energy to the grass. Okay, the grasshopper eats the grass. Okay, and then the shrew eats the grasshopper, and then the owl eats the shrew. Okay, and so you can see the energy that started at the sun ended up in the owl, right? So that was the previous picture was of a food chain. This is what we call a food web, and it's a little bit more accurate, right? It's going to tell us because there are a number of different, predators aren't just going to eat one type of animal. They're going to eat a number of different things, and so you can see here, right, that these what look like little prairie dogs, they might get eaten by a turkey or by a coyote or by a cougar. But usually, right, the deer is only going to get eaten by the apex predators, the ones that can catch them. Possibly a cougar. Um, Not likely that the coyote would bring down a full-grown deer, but I guess it's possible in a pack. Um, but wolves could, but there's no wolves in this picture. They're both the bird and the squirrel eat nuts, right? These little guys, the deer and the grasshopper all eat grass. So you can see there's an interwoven. That's kind of why it's called a food web, right? It's very interconnected. So a decomposer is an organism that obtains its energy by consuming dead plant and animal matter. These are things like bacteria, okay, fungi, or like mushrooms and things like that, um, insects, and snails. Okay, their job, again, those are decomposers. Their job is to do something that nobody else wants to do, right? That's eating or consuming the dead and decaying plant and animal matter.